Hey everybody, this is Josh Runquist for Heavy Debriefings, back with you for another tier maker list. And this one, people like to say that, including myself, that so many people have done the tier lists and bracket fights and all of that stuff, that it's kind of treading water on stuff that people have already done. Funny enough, I found a Bradley Hall video quite a bit ago where he talked about all of these bands, and he did make some excellent points on all of them. Won't spoil anything. I'll put the link in the description below when you check out that one and see how his list will be different than mine. Whereas with mine, I noticed there is a lot of bands here that I have some opinions that you will either heavily agree or heavily disagree with or think are okay. And of course this is from S to D. There is no fail section in this one, and I really don't want to mess with his ranking system because Bradley is a pretty good guy. So I'm not going to mess with what he did here. I'm just going to do what he's done here and go in the order that he has everything listed here. And I might change things up as we go along. As far as like where it's all ranked and stuff like that, I'm going to get like a preliminary idea of where everything's going to be, and then I'll rank them. I'm going to put the top one right next to the letter because that's what you're supposed to do. Not this at the end bullcrap. You read it left to right, up and down. You do it in books, magazines, and all written articles if you're in the English language. You don't do this other crap. Now, let's begin. Opeth! Now, Opeth has gone from blackened progressive metal to progressive death metal to prog rock. And I love all the eras of the band, and they are one of my favorite bands of all time. And I hope one day I can interview Michael Lakerfeld, and I'm giving them an S tier. Dream Theater! I'm going to put this in B for a second. That's not necessarily where it's going to go. I just wanted to move it somewhere just to make a point. Dream Theater used to be my favorite band of all time. My first favorite band of all time was Metallica. Then I overplayed them. That's my fault. And I can't really listen to them anymore because I just don't like it anymore, and you shouldn't subject yourself to stuff you don't like if you have the choice. If you have the choice and you listen to music you don't like, that's your own damn fault. With Dream Theater, like I mentioned in my very first tier video, I just ran out of steam with Dream Theater. And I hate saying that because they are a band that was so near and dear to me. They were so influential. Mike Portnoy is still my favorite drummer of all time, and he influenced my playing so very, very much, even though you'll probably never get to hear my playing. That's Break's Little Man, break it down. With Dream Theater, they used to be an S for me. But then, along the way, I realized that without Mike Portnoy's influences, they just aren't the same band to me anymore. And that's very disappointing to me. So, it's not a B, it's not a C, it's not a D. I am still, despite it all, gonna give him an A. Slipknot! Now, I talked about Slipknot in a previous video where I say they are a completely fine band. They have written new metal, they've written close to progressive metal, they've written hard rock, close to pop music, and everything in between, death metal, all of that good stuff. They're just a band that I never had a problem with, but they were also never a band that I needed to go out of my way to see or talk about or do anything with. And like I mentioned in another video, I'll keep this one short, I got to have a photo pass to Knotfest 2012, the very second one. The first one was in Iowa, then the next day it was in Wisconsin. I was in the media pit with all of these big magazines, and they were live streaming it, and they were doing all of this crazy stuff. And I was just out there with a little camera. Corey Taylor saw that while he was singing during it was during an instrumental break. He saw me. I was taking a picture. He gave me the devil horns so I could get a really good picture. And yeah, I thought that was fucking awesome. If I ever get to talk to Corey, if I ever get to do an interview with him, I would love to tell that story because that really meant a lot to me. I love that picture that I was able to take of him. And I mean, Slipknot's not a band I love. They're not a band I hate. They are a band. And considering that in this case B is kind of in the middle, C is there too. I mean, I'm torn between B and C, and I feel like, I'm gonna go C for now, but that could change to a B. We'll see how things turn up. Trivium! Of all the stuff that they did, there's only 2 albums I don't like. In Waves and the one that was produced by David Draymond, which I forgot the name of, and I'm sure someone will remind me. Every other album, I love. So with that, they gotta be. Napalm Death. Barney Greenway is one of the nicest people I have ever interviewed in my entire life. I am so fortunate to have interviewed him twice, and both times he couldn't have been more charming and just a gracious human being. And I love the music that they've made. And it's funny because James LaBrie wore a Napalm Death shirt during the Pull Me Under video. I'm gonna put them right next to Dream Theater right now. So that's a little bit of trivia if you did know that, or just a little bit of a remembrance in case you forgot. Machine Head is a band that exists. They have 3 albums that I love near and dear. That is Burn My Eyes, Through the Ashes of Empires, and The Blackening. Everything else exists. They get a C. Pantera. How many of you forgot that Cowboys from Hell is not the first album? Well, folks, there's only one album that I like outside the Glamtera era, and that is, of course, The Great Southern Trunkill. Otherwise, I like the Glamtera stuff to an extent. Love the album Power Metal. Cowboys from Hell had some good songs, but hit and miss. Far Beyond Driven and Vulgar Display of Power, I think it goes the other way around with those. Exist. And their last album, which I'm totally blanking out on the name of because I'm not a Pantera fanboy. Reinventing the Steel. There it is, Reinventing the Steel. Also exists. It's like Carcass's Swan Song. There's some good songs on there, but overall, it should not have been the last Pantera album. I think it should have been The Great Southern Trunkill. But this is one of those rare occurrences where the fanboys of the band piss me off so much, and Confederate flags make Pantera a D. Tool is also a D. I interviewed the band Moron Police a couple years ago to talk about their newest album at the time, and I talked to the lead singer guitarist of that band the day the latest Tool album came out, which I already forgot the name of, which is very representative of the album. He put it in a way that I could not describe it any more perfect. The latest Tool album is like a hour and a half of walking through the desert. Just from one point in the desert to another point in the desert. That's it. And to me, that's every single goddamn Tool album. Yeah, musicianship can be great. They put a lot of thought and effort into every album they do. I just don't care. Sepultura, and they have the old school death metal fonts on this one, I see. I know there's a lot of people who give the non-Max Cavalera era shit because it's not Max Cavalera and Derek is not Max. I say they're missing out on a ton of great albums. And Roots is kind of the only one that's not my bag, baby. So of all of their albums, if there's only one that isn't really my thing, and because the band was kind of imploding at that point, that's not bad. So that gets a B for me. Avenged Sevenfold. Look, I love the first couple albums. Sounding the Seventh Trumpets, and of course Waken the Fallen. And yeah, I am that kind of guy who says Waken the Fallen is their best album. And I might even make an argument that City of Evil might be their best album too, because it is like a power metal album. But everything from the self-titled on, again, is just not my bag, baby. If I was born in a different time, if I was a different kind of person, Avenged Sevenfold would be so much higher. But they're not. That's why they're getting a C. Necrophagist. They have one album, and everyone goes apeshit over it. I'm not a tech death guy. There's some tech death I like, there's some tech death I love. But I'm far from an aficionado, and I think that Epitaph was a fine album. It's okay. Of all the tech death albums I've heard, it is one of them. I just don't understand why everyone loves the album so much when so many bands have done what they've done and made it better, or even did it before Necrophagist and did it better. Sorry, that's just me. D. Venom! Now, does this include Venom Inc. as well? I'm assuming not, because it's just Venom. They are black metal band, heavy metal band, kinda thrashy metal band, who were deeply influential. They do exist, but just not something I ever really gravitated towards. At War with Satan and black metal, awesome albums. That's all I really care. So, see. Mastodon! One of the best progressive metal bands out there, whether they're doing the more sludge and hardcore influence stuff in the beginning, the more spacey prog in the middle, or a little bit more hard rock towards the third half, or just being very dark and grim with the latest album. They have so many shades and layers to them, and I think they're like a fine wine. Every album only gets better with age. The only album that I would put at the bottom is not Once More Around the Sun. It's actually Blood Mountain. Yeah, I'm dead serious. Blood Mountain is my least favorite Mastodon album. Above Once More Around the Sun, which I know is going to blow some people's minds. But again, with only one album that I don't regularly want to go back to, pretty damn impressive. And that's why, even though you're not going to see it apparently, it's going to go right there. I mean, if you got a good display, it'll show up right there. I'm not sure why he chose this picture. Amon Amarth, the AC/DC of melodic death metal. I think I kind of just said it all, didn't I? Yeah. They gotta see. If you haven't heard me say it before, I'll say it here. Everything up to With Odin on Our Side is great. It only gets better. With Odin on Our Side, top, S tier, prime Amon Amarth. Everything after With Odin on Our Side just starts sliding. You don't have to agree, it's my list. But that is just how I feel. Angra, yes. I love, love, love Angra. I love every incarnation of Angra, and they are the second biggest Brazilian band behind Sepultura. I think that's fair to say. And every album I've ever heard from them, which is all of them, has been fantastic. Not my favorite band in the world, so I am going to give them a B right next to Sepultura. But Angra, they might be the highest end of B if it keeps going this way. Anthrax. I've said it before and I will say it again. I am not a fan of Joey Belladonna's vocals, but I love John Bush's vocals. And the 4 albums from Anthrax featuring John Bush on vocals, not counting the remake album because that was basically just to fill out a contract, and god damn does it sound like that. I'm talking about the 4 original albums, prime. Whereas the rest of Anthrax I love musically, just vocals, just not my bag. Baby. But still, that said, they are my favorite of the 4, which I know that's gonna blow some of your minds. Yes, I will take Anthrax over Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer. Moving on. Cannibal Corpse. The Chris Barnes era is borderline impossible for me to listen to. The Corpse Grinder era is fantastic. Some albums are way better than others. I think Kill is the perfect Cannibal Corpse album, whether anyone wants to admit that or not. It is pristine, and what every death metal band that wants to have that classic brutal death metal sound should strive for. Or at least innovative, or be innovative off of. That said, I'm still giving it a C because of that Chris Barnes era. Children of Bodom. I will never, ever speak ill of the dead. And Alexi Leo is one of the best guitarists that lived in my generation. He was alive when I was alive. He died while I was still alive. Children of Bodom deserved all of the credit that they got, but I will say you can see everything starting to fall apart after Are You Dead Yet? I feel Are You Dead Yet was the last great Children of Bodom album. The 2 that came after it, I did not enjoy. There was one that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I believe it was Hexed was the last one. I apologize if I'm getting that wrong. I don't look this up, I do everything in one take. But that should not have been the final album from the band, and unfortunately it is. But considering they only have like 2 or 3 albums that aren't really for me and the rest of it is, I'm giving Children of Bodom a nice solid B. Now, Cradle of Filth. At least at one point in time, they were every gatekeeping asshole metal fan's favorite punching bag, and I don't understand why. I'm not someone who is obsessed with Cradle of Filth. I'm not someone who lives and dies by Danny Filth. But I've enjoyed every single Cradle of Filth album, some more than others, of course. Not every album is equal, at least from this band. But I feel every album has just been a great black metal / extreme metal album. And it's so hard to be able to captivate the audience for decades upon decades like Cradle of Filth has. And it's so great to see that. And for that, they're getting a B. Gojira! Yes, a band that Magma is my favorite album from the band, which I know, it's like, how could you say that? It's like their least progressive album, and I think that's why I enjoy it. I like it when they're more straight ahead. I like it when they can be heavy when they want to, they can show off when they want to, but they focus so much more on songwriting now. They care so much more about the live show, and I love that. I haven't seen Gorjiro since they opened for Devin Townsend, and I want to say it was Meshuggah? Yeah, I think it was Meshuggah. I know Gorjira and Devin Townsend Project played. I think it was Meshuggah that was the headliner. I could be wrong. I do apologize if I am. But Gorjira played a great set, and I also saw part of their set at Knotfest 2012, and I'd love to see them again covering the Magma and everything after, which I believe the next time, if I ever do get the chance to see Gorjira, would be for the next album run, so that would get me pretty excited. And as shocking as it might sound to some people, considering some of the bands that will be below it, Gorjira getting an A. Dragonforce! I don't hate Dragonforce the way a lot of people do. I don't love Dragonforce the way a lot of people do. I appreciate Dragonforce, what they do. They made power metal come to the limelight, and they also made it fun. I can't complain about that. If it wasn't for Dragonforce, I might not have even discovered power metal the way that I know them now. And that's not a hyperbolic statement. Like, they weren't the first power metal band I heard, but they were the first one that I started paying attention to. And it happened before Guitar Hero. It happened with Valley of the Damned, which you don't hear a lot of people say anymore. But yes, Dragonforce is a great band, and I don't think they've ever put out a crappy album. I think they do great work. It's not for everybody, nor should they be. They're a band that made power metal known to more people, and bless them for that. But they also make music I enjoy, so bless them for that as well. So for that, they're getting a B. Winter Sun! Just because of everything that has happened over the last few years, they're getting a D. I don't care how much I love the self-titled album. I don't care how much I love Time 1. I don't care how much I love the Four Seasons album. I know it has a different name, but I call it the Four Seasons album. Just all of the shit where Yari's writing 5 albums right now, and it took him 6 months to work on 1 album and get 10% more done. After all of the bullshit with building a new studio and a sauna and having a Patreon or a GoFundMe, I can't remember what it is, and constantly having Q&As and not getting shit done, it's entirely possible that these albums will not come out before Yari is no longer with us. Especially if it keeps up this way. It's not like they're all just gonna drop all at once. Obviously, they're gonna go out, they're gonna promote each album, hopefully do some shows and stuff like that, but the way this is going, there's no way any of these upcoming 5 albums are gonna live up to the hype. It just won't. And they've earned themselves such bad credit with everybody. It is so hard to be a Winter Sun fan now, and they weren't even doing interviews when I tried for the Four Seasons album. I was told they don't do interviews anymore. So, that left a bad taste in my mouth. But, yeah, I love the first 2 albums so much, and the Four Seasons one was alright, but I just can't support them anymore. Not without something to back it up. Black Sabbath! Now, is this all Black Sabbath? Well, even then, I think they have 4 good albums. That's Master of Reality, Volume 4, Heaven and Hell, and The Mob Rules. Chew on that one. Bitch about it in the comments. Exodus. I've seen Exodus, I believe, 3 times now. And every single time, It has been fantastic. While some members of the band I don't agree with politically, that's as far as I'm going to go. Other members I do agree with politically, so I'm glad to see politics doesn't get in the way of the band. It can get in the way of my enjoyment sometimes, but that's just going to happen. Still, that said, I will take Anthrax and Exodus over the other... Well, I'll take Exodus over Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer. But the John Bush era Anthrax, I'll take over all of those. So, still with that said, I'm going to put Exodus at a B. Five Finger Death Punch. How about that, folks, huh? How about, Ivan Moody no longer going to be in Five Finger Death Punch making metal music anymore? And considering that they're going to be going on tour with a country artist, I believe that he's going to go the Aaron Lewis route and start making some country music. And I base that on absolutely nothing. Well, I base that off the fact they're going on tour with a country artist. That's all I got. Unless I get to interview Ivan Moody and ask him directly, I have no idea. But to put it simply, Way of the Fist was a great album. When that first came out, I loved it. And I have a very good acquaintance. Maybe he just considers me an acquaintance. If he considers me a friend, I consider him a friend. But Charlie, their drummer, is a very good acquaintance, possible friend of mine. And the fact that he is with Five Finger Death Punch now, I couldn't wish him more success. He is one of the greatest drummers I've ever personally heard. And the fact that he gets to go on tour, hit all these places across the world, and hitting some of the biggest arenas in the world, getting #1 albums, and getting to do all that stuff, I can't blame him for that. And even though, like, Five Finger Death Punch is below what he's capable of musically, he's making all the money so he can continue to do the stuff that he wants to do musically on the side, and it's really hard to complain about that. But for me, musically, I only like Way of the Fist, and I haven't really checked anything out outside of singles that I've heard on the radio. And there's so many things that you can say about Five Finger Death Punch. So many memes have been made, so many jokes have been made, so many allegations that have been made. It's just a band that I wouldn't touch with my Five Finger Death Punch. So just to avoid any controversy, or it's controversy over here, FFDP, Full Force, Double Penetration. Yeah, Five Finger Death Punch, D. Lamb of God, I like As the Palaces Burn. They've never beaten that album. I also like Ashes of the Wake. Rest of it, okay. So it's getting a C. Halloween! A lot like Lamb of God. I love Keeper of the Seven Keys Part 1 and 2, and I feel their self-titled album that came out last year is the best work they've ever done. But everything in between, it's a hard sell. C. Death Angel. Arguably the most underrated thrash metal band that ever hit the popularity scales. I love Death Angel. They're not my favorite thrash band on this list, but they deserve all the love and respect I could possibly ever give them. And they've never put out a clunker of an album. They're not my favorite, but they are high up. Gotta give them a B. Havoc. The creators of the No Karate in the Pit shirt, which I still wear proudly for that fact. While they've made some statements that are not stuff that I can agree with, they have written some good music. Haven't really kept up too much with them lately, but, they exist. And I'll give them a C. Maiden, here we go. This is where all the fun's gonna start. I saw Maiden back in 2016, 2017, something like that. Whenever Ghost opened for them. And I was very, very fucking gracious to be able to check out Maiden and check out Ghost. I saw Ghost at a 800-person venue when they first came to Minnesota on their very first tour with Ancient Wisdom and Blood Ceremony. Next time I saw them, they were playing the Xcel Energy Center, which I believe is like 11,000 people. Then the next time they came here, I didn't get a chance to see it, but they were playing at the Target Center, which I believe holds 15 to 20,000, somewhere in that range. I said back during their second or third album that they were going to be the next big arena rock band. And I had so many people laugh at me because that was just such an absurd absurd thing. Y'all laughed at me. Y'all laughed at me. But who's laughing now? Ghost is a huge arena rock band that some people don't think is any good. I love Ghost, and yeah, this is gonna break a lot of people's hearts, but they put on a better show than Maiden that night. I'm sorry to continuously put your underwear into a twist, but I'm not done doing that with this list. Maiden is fine. I don't despise them, but I don't think they're the world's greatest band. I don't think they're the world's greatest UK band. I don't even think they're the greatest new wave of British heavy metal band. They exist. And they've put out a lot of albums that I simply don't care about. I'm sorry, folks. They're in the C tier. Priest. Judas Priest, that is. If you have to go with like all the big bands of the new wave of British heavy metal, even though they predate it, I like Priest more. They put out some albums that I truly don't like. I don't like the Ripper Owens albums. And I thought Nostradamus was probably the worst album Judas Priest has ever done. Only the title track is listenable to me. But everything else has some really good songs on there. There's some stuff I definitely dig. And I like them more than Maiden. And yeah, I'm going to put them in a B. Korn. Just to save some time, they're not my bag. Same with Limp Bizkit. Linkin Park. I do like the first two albums. I do enjoy the first two Linkin Park albums. And my, rock and roll will never die. I really wish these weren't PNGs. But what are you going to do? Megadeth. Probably my second favorite of the big four. And I still don't like him that much. I don't like it where, that's just crazy Uncle Dave. Because that just lets him get away with a bunch of bullshit that should not be done. And that's just politically. I will never deny that he is a magnificent songwriter, and he has written some of the most influential thrash albums of all time. That doesn't stand on a hill of beans to me if I don't care about that. Megadeth has never been one of those bands that meant much to me. They exist. I like them more than Metallica, but they just exist. So, yeah, I apologize, but Megadeth, you're in a C. Merciful Fates. I wish King Diamond was on here too, but what are you going to do? But Merciful Fate has never let me down, and they are an S-tier band for me. That perfect mix of new wave of British heavy metal, even though they are from the Netherlands, help really start the black metal influence, and one of the first bands to really showcase the dark, evil, satanic side of bands. Whether they actually believe it or not, I believe King Diamond really does, and I believe the other members might too, but even if they don't, it's great social commentary. Plus, the riffs are ever so sweet, even if the recording quality isn't always the best. But I can overlook that because the songs are just that killer. And yeah, they're an S-tier band for me. Meshuggah, as I've mentioned elsewhere, they found their sound, and they are not going to let it die. They are a C-tier band for that reason. Yes, it took a couple albums for them after they found their tone to become the biggest band of their style, and I'm not going to say they invented djent. They just did what they did, and I think other bands invented djent to copy Meshuggah. And in the words of Devin Townsend, and in the end we all rip off Meshuggah. But if you've heard one Meshuggah song and you don't care that much, you have basically heard all Meshuggah songs from nothing till now. The stuff before that has some more originality while they're still trying to find their sound. But once they found their sound, I wanted to hear more, and I've yet to get that. Motorhead, a band that exists. Yes, they are influential. Yes, they are a successful band. Yes, Lemmy has been called a god. He is one of the ugliest guys to get more laid than anyone else outside of Gene Simmons, just because of his no fucks given attitude, constantly drinking his Jack and Cokes, which is now referred to as a Lemmy, and his carton of cigarettes, and fucking everything that he sees. Of course, now that he's gone, his legacy still kind of lives on, and you constantly hear Ace of Spades used in commercials and movies and TV shows now, which I don't think was going to happen while he was alive, because it was rarely used. But outside of the main Motorhead songs that you know, they do sound all the same. Some are faster, some are slower. That's it. Just the tempo's different. And I need something that's not always a bad thing. That is not always a bad thing. But in the case when it comes to Motorhead, I'd rather hear another band do it. And do it arguably better. So, see. Overkill, another band that I love more than the Big Four. Again, these are not in any particular order outside of what ranking they are. I'm going to be doing that after I put all of them up on there and do that finalization. But Overkill is absolutely a B band for me. They are fucking awesome, and every time I've ever seen them live, it's been fucking killer. Creator, one of my favorite thrash bands of all time, and another solid B band. Death. Now, in particular with this, I know Bradley Hall's not a big fan of them, and, you know, he has his reasons. But I have my reasons to put it in S. Every single Death album is the perfect metal album for that year. And Leprosy is my favorite death metal album of all time. So, yeah, this is a band that does live up to all the hype to me. I can understand why you don't like Chuck's vocal style from Symbolic to Sound of Perseverance. That's fine. It's okay to be wrong. But no, seriously, I do get it. And I can understand why some people only like the first 3, maybe 4 albums, because that was more like pure death metal before it got more progressive and technical. I've seen some people refer to Death as a tech death band. No, they were a death metal band that became more of a progressive death metal band. Progressive and technical are not the same thing. Not going to go over it here. Maybe one day. But all that said, Death is an S-tier band. Ramstein. They are a solid A for me. As I get older, the more I appreciate Ramstein and everything they do. Industrial used to not really be my thing, even though I did like Ramstein when I was younger. I never heard them that much. But with time, started to appreciate them more and more, and they are as good of a band as people make them out to be. Both the live show and what they do in the studio. And when they're in front of the camera. They are just that good. Sodom. Funny enough as I am making this just a couple days ago. Oh, sorry, that was suicidal. Where is Sodom? Oh, there's Sodom. Okay. I interviewed Tom Angel Ripper just a few days ago as of me recording this, talking about 40 Years at War, and I find that to be an absolutely killer compilation of re-recorded songs, one off of each new album. I think Tom said some things last year that didn't go over well, but he had to retract what he was saying. I think that was just because people misunderstood what he was saying. I don't want to get into it, and I'm not an apologist by any fucking means. If he had, like, ill will or really bad feelings about something, I think it would have been more fucking evidently known than in a Facebook post about a festival. Every time I've ever interviewed Tom, he's always been fucking awesome. And I don't think he has a bad bone in his body. And that said, every Sodom album fucking rules. So, yeah. Not my favorite thrash metal band, even though it seems like it here so far. I do put Sodom at an A. Suicidal Tendencies. Perfect band to fit into the B category. Whether they're doing skate punk, crossover thrash, funk metal, whatever they do, or whatever the clap like Ozzy thing was. It's all in good fun. Psycho Mike is one hell of a frontman, whether he was in his angry 20s or in his angry 50s. He's just fun to watch, and they make some killer albums. Not everything is perfect, but the stuff that is good is some of the best out there. So, yeah, I think B is fucking perfect. System of a Down, I've never given a fuck about. And I probably do have to blame that on my brother being such a huge fan of them, so I've been completely subjective about them. It's like, oh, if my brother likes them, I'm never gonna like them. But also, Darren's vocals just piss me off. And the drummer of System of a Down is a right-wing asshole, so why would I want to support that? And yeah, I like Surge's solo material so much fucking more than System of a Down. I would take Beethoven's Cunt over anything System of a Down has ever done. Yeah, I said it. Testament. Favorite thrash metal band of all time. And they are S tier to me. Some people think that they ripped off Metallica. I've never heard a Metallica riff in Testament's music. Maybe I'm deaf to it, I don't know, but I've never heard it. Testament sounds like Testament, and that's all I need. Again, not every album has been perfect, but they have more than enough perfect albums to me to where S just works. Oh, we're coming near the end here. Mayhem! D. Look, everything that happened with Mayhem back in the early 90s, stuff that came out after, the stuff with Necro Butcher, the stuff with Hellhammer, Attila, and their their current guitarist, who's been there for quite a while. The only two decent guys in the entire band that's ever been in the band. And they still make music that I just simply don't care about. That's just the way it is. Do-do-do, do-do-do, do-do-do. Some things never change. Typo Negative. Now, they have made some amazing music, even though Mr. Steele kind of went off the deep end with Dead Again. I blame that 100% on all the drugs that he was taking. I don't think he actually believed any of the conspiracy theories that he started to believe towards the end. I think it was just unfortunate everything that happened to him, so that is one of those situations where I do give him a pass, even though it's kind of a knuckle biter on that. It's like, oh. But his music in Carnivore, his music in Typo is just so fucking good, and they're just one of those bands that I love the bands that were inspired by Typo so much more than Typo, but I'm still putting Typo at a B because I like the music of Typo that much, which I think says a lot. Slayer D. What? Yeah, Slayer's D for me. I know that's probably not what you want to hear. Maybe there's a couple people going like, oh, thank fuck you said that, but Slayer have put out a few good albums. I like Rain and Blood. Well, most of it. South Heaven's pretty good. Season of the Abyss, I think it's one of their best ones. God Hates Us All is my favorite, which I know some people get really pissed off when I say that. And the rest is absolutely something I don't care about. Plus their fans are fucking awful. Not all of them, of course, but there's enough of them where you can say that Slayer fans are fucking awful. So they belong in the D tier. Rings of Saturn. Unfortunately, this is a band that it's the band that I'm least familiar with out of all of these bands. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding this band for either faking their music or talking shit about bands or other musicians. That really disappoints me. I mean, I can't really give them that fair of a shot because I haven't gone out of my way to listen to them. So for that reason, I mean, if I was to make another one of these, I'd put it in the not familiar category, but for all that said, it's going in the D category. And now finally, the biggest band in the world, Metallica. As I've said numerous places, and I'll say it here again in case this is the first video of mine you're checking out, or first time hearing me talk about Metallica. Metallica was my very first band I fell in love with. They were the first band I really truly listened to. They were the first concert I went to go see, and I loved everything about them until Saint Anger. And I tried for quite a while to love that album because I was such a Metallica fanboy. I tried to convince myself that I enjoyed the album. And in a weird twist of fate, I came to the realization in two ways. That one, they just weren't making the music that I wanted to hear anymore, and I wanted to hear something different, so I got the internet around the same time, and I started exploring my options when it came to Metallica, and I discovered bands like Dream Theater and Opeth, and I bought the Freddy vs. Jason soundtrack not long after, and discovered Anthrax and Shadows Fall and Mastodon and all these other great bands. But I never had that same love for Metallica again, and I never will. I completely burnt myself on them. That's my fault. Some of it I just never want to hear again. Some songs I tried to convince myself I liked, never did. Anyone who talks so highly of Metallica, if anyone does around me, I just get quiet. Because if you can't say anything good, don't say anything at all. I don't want to piss in anyone's Cheerios while they're trying to praise something. I'm not gonna yuck on your yum. But for me, Metallica just doesn't have it for me anymore. And part of that is just the burnout of hearing them so much. Part of that is just seeing the kinds of people that they are. And some of that is just the simple fact that they don't make the music that I want to hear anymore. And there's other bands that are close, that just don't cover what I want out of Metallica. And yeah, I mean, that's really as simple as that. It's just like Metallica, they've earned the right to be the most popular metal band in the world. Can never take that away from them. And there will be never another metal band that reaches the same levels that Metallica did. Never. No one will accomplish what they've done financially, musically, record sales, any of that stuff ever again. Some might hit other territories, but not all of them. And for that, I salute you, Al Borland style. But for my own musical taste, I am going with a D. And I am going to go ahead, take a pause for the cause, and fix this all up so it's in the order that I feel the most comfortable with. And we're back with the finalized order, going to be starting from D all the way to S in the final ranked versions of this. Now again, some of these are PNGs, so I might forget what those bands are, so I might have to pull them out and see what they are. That's just going to be how it is. But starting from the band that I like the least, the band I like the most. Let's begin. Starting with D. In the last place position, Limp Bizkit, then Korn, Five Finger Death Punch, System of a Down, Pantera, Tool, Rings of Saturn, and I placed them there mainly because I am just not familiar enough with them. Slayer, Metallica, Mayhem, Necrophagist, and Winter Sun. Then for C, we have Machine Head, Motorhead, Havoc, Linkin Park, Meshuggah, Venom, Lamb of God. I just noticed now that says Black Sabbath Bitch, but I know that was supposed to be Sabbath. Avenged Sevenfold, Slipknot, Amon Amarth, Megadeth, Iron Maiden, Halloween, and Cannibal Corpse. Then in the B, we have Dragonforce, Typo Negative, Suicidal Tendencies, Judas Priest, Exodus, Cradle of Filth, Sepultura, Children of Bodom, Overkill, Anthrax, Angra, Trivium, Death Angel, and Creator. In the A tier, we have Gorjira, Napalm Death, Ramstein, Sodom, Mastodon, and Dream Theater. And finally in the S tier, which is so much different than I thought it was going to be. I'm surprised I don't even have Dream Theater in the S tier. But that how she be. Merciful Fate, Testament, Opeth, and my favorite band out of everything listed here, Death. And that does it for the metal band ranked Bradley Hall version. I thank Bradley for all the quality entertainment that he's been putting on, whether it's great 10-minute documentary style stuff involving backing tracks, whether it's like the 30-second comedy skits that he does, the 5-minute creative songs of different bands, making fun of other bands, showing off that he can play every single instrument. Seeing from when he first bought his electric drum set to what he can do now is just awe-inspiring. And he just seems like a great old chap. So thank you very much for making this list, and that is it from me for this list. I'll be making another one at some point, but until then, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, but I think you already know that. And until next time, this is Josh Runquist for the Heavy Debriefings, saying, see ya.